Well, everyone, it's time for us to go ahead and talk about the OnePlus 9 and see how this phone has been holding up the last year or so since it's actually been out. Now, personally, I think the OnePlus 9 was a very interesting phone, not necessarily for the best reasons. I think OnePlus could have done a way better job when they first made this phone, and now I just don't really know where they stand. They're releasing phones way ahead of schedule, and they're announcing phones way ahead of schedule. They're not releasing them until way later, and I just think the hype around all these phones is kind of going down, and I think that really kind of started with the OnePlus 8. Honestly, with the OnePlus 8 not getting wireless charging and everything, the 8 Pro got it. The OnePlus 9 kind of followed in the same suit, and I just think with all the other phones just going up in value so much in terms of, what they're offering to the table, the Samsungs, the Pixels, even with the iPhones, right now I just think it's just a weird time to buy a OnePlus phone in so many different ways, and I think with the OnePlus 9, I just wish they could go back to their roots, maybe something like a OnePlus 7 Pro. That phone was so good. With each iteration of phones, they're just increasing the price, and I just think they're still trying to just, they're trying to compete with, the Galaxy S22, and they're trying to compete with the iPhone 13s, when realistically, I think they should go more with like a Pixel 5 strategy and make a good budget phone at a good price tag. People don't really want another $1,000 phone right now. I think most people want like a good $600 phone or something along those lines. And even with the OnePlus 9 right now on their website, it's still selling for $729. Like, this phone is not worth $729. You can buy a Galaxy S21 that is a way better phone than this thing for way less than $700. You can buy that thing for like $400 probably. So if you want to buy some phones I would recommend this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there. You can help support the channel at the same time. Now, on the front of the OnePlus 9, we had a pretty decent 6.55-inch Fluid AMOLED display. It was a 1080p panel, but it was 120 Hz, which was really nice. Having 120 Hz, especially on a phone that's pretty much like stock Android, it's really a good version of software. I kind of like Auction OS. Auction OS used to be my favorite version of software until they mixed up with Color OS and made all that weird stuff. That was another big reason why OnePlus has been kind of flopping recently. And with this type of display, and with that hole punch display, I think it was a good thing about this phone. I think in that area, it still is kind of relevant. It's definitely not a bad looking phone, but I would say, it's pretty much looked the same thing on the front as a OnePlus 8, so not really much has changed there. You had a USB Type-C port on the bottom of this thing, which was great, and on the back you had a frosted glass back, which personally I think is one of the best things about OnePlus phones since they actually brought them in on the OnePlus 8. They didn't originate, frosted glass back, but that was one of my favorite things about this phone. And now with this thing being a little bit over a year old, frosted glass backs have been helping these phones age just so much better. Before with those standard glass backs were a little different. This one looks so much better, which is really, really cool. So that kind of covers it up in the outside standpoint. Now, we do have wireless charging on this phone, which is great, and you can charge another device through your USB port if you really want to, which is cool, and that kind of covers it up on the outside. Now, we also have the camera set up on this thing. So we have a 48 megapixel wide-angle lens, a 50 megapixel ultra-wide lens, then a 2 megapixel monochrome lens, and on the front, we have that great old 16 megapixel wide-angle lens. They love using that 16 megapixel lens. I think it's been there since like the OnePlus 7 or something, and they still keep it there, which is very interesting. Now, on the back of this phone, we can do 4K at 60, and we can do 8K video. I think this was the phone that, OnePlus actually teamed with Hasselblad on, and that was a very interesting team-up. I don't know why they did that, because the camera themselves still weren't that crazy good. It's not bad, and if you were to give me this specific camera, I'd be totally okay with it. I feel like I can do whatever I need to do with it. But the one thing that I still don't understand why, they were doing this was basically with the front camera. I don't understand how you can make a front camera even in like 2020 where they can't even do 4K at 60 on the front. I feel like that is just a massive weird thing to do, and OnePlus did that for many generations, and maybe they did stopped it with the OnePlus 10. I haven't even looked at their OnePlus 10s to be honest, but I just feel like they could have done a little bit of a better job when it came down to it. So if you're planning on getting this phone, just know that the camera is, they hyped it up like crazy that this was like the best camera of all time, and I remember during their keynote, I think a lot of people mentioned that during their own keynote, that the images they were using for comparisons, like the iPhone camera looked better, the Samsung cameras looked better, the photos that they took. So I don't really understand what they were doing, but I guess we'll see what happens in the future. Now moving on to the software, this phone is running Color OS or Oxygen OS, but it seems like it kind of, matched up with Color OS, which is Oppo's, I believe it's Oppo's software that they use. And as I've mentioned before, they could have probably done a better job here. Oxygen OS 10 was amazing. It was one of my favorite versions of software of all time. And then OnePlus pretty much started really focusing on other things. And now, maybe you can go and custom ROM this thing. If you were able to do that, then I would recommend doing that on this phone. But again, it just doesn't make too much sense, because when you look at the competition right now, you look at the Google Pixel 6, the Google Pixel 6 Pro, you look at even the iPhones, the Galaxy S22, the S21 Plus of last year, the S21 Ultra, those phones are just so much better than this phone in every single area. Those phones are better than the OnePlus 9 Pro as well. So it just doesn't really make too much sense to buy this phone even in that standpoint. Even if you like stock Android, you have a phone for you with the Pixels. If you don't mind a skinned UI, well then you can go get a Samsung and get way more features built in. So this phone sits in the middle and it's overpriced, so it's just not really that good of a price in my opinion. That's basically the biggest fall here. Now moving on to the performance, this is probably one of the better things about this phone. We had that Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 chipset inside of it with 8 gigs of RAM on the base model, and it did go up to 12 gigabytes of RAM. Now, personally, I think this is a really good thing for this phone. Having the ability of going up to 12 gigs of RAM is good, and it can future-proof this phone a little bit more. Now, I also do like having 8 gigs of RAM on the base models. I feel like if they were to go up and maybe go up to, I just feel like they could have done something where they put 6 gigs of RAM and then 8 gigs of RAM on the top, but I do like how they did this with this specific device, and I think the performance is probably one of the better things here. This thing had the greatest chipset, pretty much one of the best ones of last year, probably underneath the A14 and A15 Bionic that Apple made, but I do think this thing is a really good performing phone for the most part. I didn't really have too many issues with throttling or anything like that when I owned this phone, but it is very weird because almost every single, gaming related video that I watch nowadays when they're doing mobile games, or if they're playing emulators on their phone or whatever, nobody ever uses a OnePlus phone. I think I've seen a couple that use a OnePlus 7 Pro, but nobody's using a OnePlus 9. It's almost always a Samsung Galaxy of some sort. Even their A series, a lot of people use those. A lot of people use Poco phones as well. Nobody's really using OnePlus phones there, which is very weird. I think this phone's performance is pretty good, but I think that just has to do with their market share. I just think they're just too overpriced for what they're offering still. From, a few years ago when they were offering a really good phone like the OnePlus 7 Pro at a very good price, that was awesome. That was a very smart thing to do. Now, it doesn't really seem like that's the case, and I'll be curious to see what they do in the future, but I think the performance is a really good thing about this phone. It's just kind of, it just so happens that all those other phones were pretty much the same thing too. So that kind of covers it up there. And the battery life standpoint, 4,500 mAh battery there, and that's a pretty good size battery. I think it's probably one of the bigger sizes you can get for a phone for this caliber from 2021, and I do think that's probably one of its biggest assets as well. The battery life is definitely not bad, and I'm a fan of the battery life here. We don't have a reverse wireless charging, but we still have standard wireless charging, which is good enough, for a OnePlus phone, and finally they brought it in. So in terms of everything, I think the OnePlus 9 is not a bad phone. It's not a crazy bad phone in any area. It's just overpriced. Nobody's really interested in this phone that much, and because OnePlus has been making weird decisions all over the place, it just hasn't really had the same spark of something even like a OnePlus 8. And even the OnePlus 8 wasn't perfect. I actually liked that phone a lot, but a lot of people were like, okay, great, it's overpriced. I don't think it had IP certification. I don't think it had wireless charging. But now with the OnePlus 9 and with the OnePlus as a company, I feel like they can do a lot better. And I feel like we do need more phones in the market, to be honest. And I think OnePlus could do a little bit of a better job. I'm hoping the Nothing phone kind of takes off a little bit more, so then we can get a little bit more excited about another phone. But right now, I still think it's Google, I think it's Samsung, and I think it's iPhones for the most part. So that kind of covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.